And we are live. Hooray, hooray. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the B2B LinkedIn Live Lounge. And today I'm very excited to introduce my guest, who actually isn't very far away from me. And the clue is in the name. So welcome, Beth Kirk, to the B2B Live Lounge.
I'm thrilled to be here, Sarah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm in Oxford, which is looking a little bit frosty still out of the window. We did have a good snow dump this week. So yes, very, very, very delighted to be here.
I loved the fact that I got up, was it yesterday morning or the day before? And obviously the first thing I do is go to my phone. And my daughter, who was upstairs, had texted into the family WhatsApp group, "It's snowing." And I was like, oh, jumped out of bed and had to, run, look at the window, and there it was snowing. And I love things that aren't meant to happen, that we're the unexpected. And I was very excited by this. And even on LinkedIn, I really like it when I come across a post. I think, oh, hello, that made me stop and think. I could talk about Jaguar, but let's not do that today. Which is all over LinkedIn. I love the fact that Jaguar have rocked people's boats this week. So well done them. But yes, Beth, really, really happy to have you on the show, all the way from Oxford, England. And we have known each other via social media for many, many a year.
Yes. Do you know, I can't put an annual date on that, Sarah.
Me neither. I think we just kind of move around in the same circles, don't we? And that was the days of pre-lockdown, I think, even when we were hanging out on Instagram.
Yes, because I remember after I did my kind of upskilling in digital marketing, having left a more of a traditional marketing career. And I definitely remember you were one of the initial people that I came and followed on LinkedIn. I definitely remember that.
Good. Well, that's nice to know. Yeah, and LinkedIn, I mean, obviously we know it's changed so much over the years. And when I first started doing LinkedIn, I didn't even look at company pages at all. No. I don't think anybody did really. And I think it's only in the last probably 2 or 3 years that people have realized actually there is something here. There's a different way that we can market ourselves. It's another opportunity for brand awareness. It's another opportunity to get our message out. And hey, it's all free. Why not use them? And I think I think company pages are fantastic. And I know that is also a focus for what you're doing at the moment. You're working with company pages too. And yeah, so I'd just love to know what sort of prompted you and how did you get into working with company pages as well as personal profile?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because actually when LinkedIn, and you probably experienced this, Sarah, LinkedIn's a platform that a lot of people shy away from for various different reasons. The reality being, if you're a B2B marketer, you really can't, but we'll come back to that. But when I did my training, so I trained with a company, a digital marketing training provider that now no longer exists, but I actually worked alongside a national charity who are the Food Ethics Council. I don't mind mentioning them. They still exist. Fantastic charity, very small, doing fantastic work in the food and farming space. And part of my work, if you like, was around helping them optimize a LinkedIn company page. And I really, really enjoyed it. And, they had a fantastic community of people who are really passionate about sustainable food and farming and food poverty. And, there was so much happening in that space. And their beliefs and values were really, really important to get across. And I think that planted a seed with me because I loved that work. We weren't just on LinkedIn, we were on Twitter, as it were, at the time. But actually, I guess, and I remember it being, with my peers that we were training alongside, I think I was the only person running a LinkedIn company page throughout that time period. And everyone was a bit like, isn't that really dull or boring? And I was like, no, this is, I'm enjoying this. So that, I guess, planted that initial seed. And then when it came to me, starting out with my own business and finding my own clients later on, I then, for some reason, sort of gravitated towards other social platforms like Instagram. And so many people said to me, you should be on LinkedIn. And I was just kind of like, not sure about that. I feel like it's where my corporate network are, but actually, I'm safer over here. And then it was about 3 years ago when I kind of thought, actually, why am I not optimizing LinkedIn? I've been running company pages, but I wasn't optimizing my own personal profile. So then that all changed, because then I switched my focus and actually found that that's what clients were coming to me to talk to me about. So now, this year, actually, I would say a large proportion of my work has been around company pages, supporting marketing teams with getting a better understanding of how to optimize them. Very similar to the work you do, Sarah. And so, so I do think they're a really good opportunity, and I do feel they're quite misunderstood. And I think you've probably experienced this as well. And I think that LinkedIn is improving them. They're launching and releasing new features and tactics that make them more worthwhile, more worth the effort.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with all of that. And I think what I love about company pages, well, I love the fact that when you're working with a company, you've got kind of a duopoly, if you like. You can approach things in two ways. So you're not quite getting double the reach because of the way that company pages work, but you're definitely getting more reach. And I see with my clients, their whole brand awareness piece just grows enormously when they start using the company page properly. But one of the things I love, and one of the big differences between company pages and personal profiles, is the depth of analytics. And you can really dive very, very deep into who the audience is, what's happening with the content. And I think you can take that and use it in so many different ways, obviously. And that's one of the reasons I really love LinkedIn. And those analytics are so easy to access.
Yes. Yeah. And I think when you start showing people what they can do, or what they can understand in there, then, because marketing teams get so busy and they're doing so many things, and, it's like, oh, quick, put something out on the company page, done, box ticked. But actually there's so much more that can be done, for sure.
Absolutely. There really, really is. And I'm just thinking about, let's look at solopreneurs, for example, or maybe somebody who's got a very, very small team, or maybe the team is remote, so they're not really counted as employees as such. Would you advise a solopreneur to have a company page?
So this is a really good question, and when you asked this of me, I thought, because I just think it prompts a really good discussion, because I don't know if I have a definite yes or a no. I think there's scenarios that you have to consider. And I was talking about this on a coaching call this morning with a number of people. Actually, we were actually talking about personal profiles, but some of them were running their own or setting up their own businesses. So this question comes at a really good time, because I said to them, there is obviously the advantages of having a company page in place. So that's going to give you that lovely logo on your own profile. It's going to put that lovely logo at the top right. So, your top card of your profile, people are going to visit your profile immediately. They're going to see a business name that, you've created, if it's your own business. But ultimately, a company page for an individual person is it's another area that you've got to optimize on the platform. So if we're going to create company pages and then just leave them or not put any content on them, then that's a missed opportunity. But I think if you've got a company page and if you're looking to attract companies with budgets, that, you know, companies where, you know, they really want to check you out before they invest in you, then maybe you do need to have a company page there that they go to and they can see your credibility, they can see your logo, they can maybe see that you've got recommendations or some really nice quality content sitting there. You know, and I guess that adds that social proof to who you are. So I think it, you know, I think it's going back to what I said on the call this morning. I said, if you really want to attract those kinds of clients that will want that reassurance and that social proof of you and that you are a brand, then, you know, go, you know, do that, create that company page, but also then be aware that, you know, that's something else that comes into your marketing mix. If you don't feel that you're ready for that and you don't need to, then stay with your personal profile, because your personal profile gets fantastic reach through the network. So that was where I ended up with.
No, I like it. I like that. And I think it isn't a yes or no answer. I think you're right. And I always say to people who are starting out, I say, have you got the time to run both effectively? Because if you're spreading yourself too thinly, and this is also the same argument as how many platforms should I be on? If you're spreading yourself too thinly, you're not going to do either. You're not going to do any particularly well. Having said that, once a company page is set up, it's really not an awful lot to it once you've got it going as a solopreneur, and you can repurpose the same content on both.
Yes.
Because you've got two different audiences effectively. And I think you're right. I think the corporate audience are more likely to go to the company page and read that content, whereas perhaps, you know, the smaller businesses might spend more time on looking at your personal profile. And I do see an increase in brand awareness and also visits to the website if you've got both. So,
okay, interesting.
Yeah, you've got an opportunity. And also on a company page, you've got that button at the top, visit the website. It's very easy for people to click through and get to the website. So I'm a strong believer that solopreneurs should have a company page, but using the same or very, very similar content on both, I think is the way forward. And I would also say, because actually one of my clients this morning, she messaged me and said, I've just posted on the company page. I'm absolutely flat out. I haven't got time to write another post. Can I just put this same post on my personal profile? And how do I do that? So she said, shall I just hit repost? I said, no, you recreate it as another fresh organic post on your personal profile, but post it tomorrow. Because if you post both on the same day, you're going to lessen the impact of those two, and you're going to reduce the reach definitely on the second post and possibly on the first. So I always say, you know, do the same, but don't just repost, use the same post, but recreate it.
Yes. No, I think that's brilliant advice. I've got a client actually where we came across a really interesting piece of content this morning. And we were both quite excited about this piece of content because it shares some really good insights. And, you know, and I thought, and they've got a company page, and I thought, right, okay, that's one for the company page. But actually, I also want my client to then share it with different copy and adding a bit more from her perspective in, you know, probably two or three days between the two. So exactly the same principles as what you've just said. So yeah, absolutely. And again, that's a really nice repurpose of the content as well, isn't it?
Gosh, yeah, make it go as far as you can. And you know, I often get asked the question, but won't people get fed up of seeing the same post twice? And my response is always A, that's not necessarily going to happen, and it is quite unlikely. But B, if you're driving down the motorway and you see the Golden Arches, okay, you see the big McDonald's M once, you might just see it and it goes, and then you see it twice, And then you see it the third time, and by then you really want that burger, you know.
I've not heard that analogy before, Sarah. I like
that. You can't say it too many times. But actually, I think it's the number of times that we see something as before it really hits us, I think has gone up to 7 now.
Yeah, it's interesting because as soon as you said that, I was thinking I've seen some articles, or I think maybe there's been a marketing conference somewhere where some insights have been shared on this, because I'm sure people are now talking about 7 times, that touch point 7 times before they seriously consider working with you. So yeah, and also going back to the point you mentioned earlier, where it's unlikely people are going to see both pieces of content anyway, is that the reality of only around 10% is it of our audiences see our content anyway, unless it's a really high performing piece of content where you're hoping it's going further through the network. So actually, which I think also then leads back to the benefit of repurposing content full stop, not necessarily across the 2 pages, but just repurposing content, because not everybody sees it. And I think sometimes people really do worry that, what will people think if it's the same piece, or, we shared that a few months ago, we can't share that again. And actually you can. So,
you absolutely can, and it's like when you put the radio on and a song that comes on, it actually feels nice and warm and fuzzy, and it's a nice thing that you've seen it before you know it. So I don't think we don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time we make a post.
No, and I'm guilty of that myself, actually. In fact, I've got it written on I don't know if you keep a CEO list, Sarah. I see people talking about CEO lists all the time on LinkedIn, but I keep a CEO list on my desk of things that I just think, I've got to get back to that. I've got to go and do that, or that's really high business development list, if you like. And actually repurposing my content is number 2 on the list for December. So yeah, because we can't always, we shouldn't always be creating from scratch or from nothing.
We don't need to. We really don't need to. And of course we get new followers all the time, and so those new followers won't have seen stuff that we've put out previously anyway. So yeah. So on company pages, and this is one of the things that I love asking people is what do you see as the biggest or most common mistake that you see on company pages?
Well, this is really funny, because when I went into this, I was like, I thought of about 5.
Go on then. I just said 1 to make it easy. You see as many as you like.
No, so I think, and this has come up in two businesses that I've worked with recently, and that is both company pages where there was no response to engagement and no engagement happening. So, one page had, they were posting probably a couple of times per week. Some of the content, not all of it, because actually they needed to improve their content quite a bit, but some of their content was, getting some comments, and some really nice comments, thoughtful comments from individuals on LinkedIn, and no comments were being acknowledged at all.
You see, I did an inhale of breath.
Sharp inhale of sharp. So as I scroll, because obviously, we audit, don't we? We look at what they're doing, and we kind of gives us a good feel for where the learning opportunities are around the company pages. And I thought, gosh, they haven't replied to anything. And then it's come up again with another organization as well, and they were actually responding, but they weren't actually writing any form of response. So they were acknowledging a comment, but not, so they were reacting to a comment, but not replying. So with both of these, these organizations, I said, if you want to create a community around your page, or if you want people to know there's people behind the logo, then you need to voice your opinion and and you need to respond to people. You need to make them feel heard. You need to, thank people for taking the time to comment on your content, and thank them for their additional insights or their views. And, and I get, and I think if I went and looked at another 10 or 20 company pages, and I did do quite a lot of research recently for one of those companies, I saw it a lot. I was like, actually, this really is a thing that, people are not acknowledging the content. So I think that's a huge opportunity, because it, as I've mentioned, it, shows that there's people behind the brand and the logos. It makes people feel warm and fuzzy that a brand has acknowledged them on social media. Like, people do genuinely feel like that. And I felt like that when a brand has acknowledged me. And I think that's really important. And, without even going into the proactive engagement where, as a brand, you're exposing yourself when you're actually proactively going and commenting on other content, again, that's another huge opportunity. So the engagement piece is really important. And I do think that's a lot of companies and organizations are missing that.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think it's too easy for companies just to hide behind the facade of the company page. And the likelihood is that they're paying a social media manager or an agency to write that content and post that content for them. But they really need to have either a community manager or, somebody in-house perhaps who is responding, because people have made the effort to make a comment on a post. The least you can do is respond to that comment, because otherwise you look like you don't care. But also, that person's showing an interest in your company. They may be a potential buyer in the future, or a supporter, or a contributor in some way. It's a huge missed opportunity. I agree.
And I think with marketing departments, a lot of it is, the marketing department's just so busy. So I think it gets deprioritized because they don't see the value in it. Maybe it's something they've never done. And the other thing that I see around it is that, you might have a junior marketing exec who is responsible for creating and putting the content out there. And, certainly with an organization that I've worked with recently, they, with comments, some comments were really quite insightful in terms of what the company was responsible for. And, some probably not the best task for a junior to undertake. And, they saw that as an editorial and felt that it needed to sit with somebody else. Totally agree with that, but it should then become somebody's task to be signposted to comments that need to be responded to with the appropriate content and with the appropriate tone. So, I think there's always reasons for not doing it, but I think it is really important to do it.
Yeah, I agree. It's the face of the company, isn't it, at the end of the day? And I think there's a lot of fear around LinkedIn, and I think maybe that's a part of it. But really, if you're spending money in your marketing department and you're spending money on somebody to create content and post it out, you've got to follow through. Otherwise, you're just pretty much leaving money on the table, aren't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that led to some quite interesting discussions actually about how.
I like that. I think that's a really, really useful one. And in fact, company pages don't tend to get an awful lot of engagement. So crikey, grab it while it's there.
Yeah. If you get it.
If you're going to get it, make
it.
sure you're responding. Yeah. And talking of content, so LinkedIn is now so busy. There's over 1 billion personal profiles on there, 37 or so, million companies, etc. It's huge. It's huge, 1,000 companies rather. How do we make content that people are actually going to stop and look at, let alone comment on? Have you got any advice for companies in that, or even actually for individuals as well?
Yeah, so for me, I think what I see so many company pages doing is they're almost just they're regurgitating their blogs, and their blogs might be fantastic, or they're putting quite nicely structured image posts out. Great, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But actually, is your competitor probably doing that as well? Are you differentiating yourself from your competitor? Probably not. You'll probably just look the same. So you're not doing a terrible job. But actually, if you want to really differentiate yourself and stand out, then look at different content formats. If you're always using the same content formats, then look at switching those up. Do something different to what everybody else is doing. And again, as I mentioned, that I was doing some research in a sector a couple of months ago. And, and I said to the clients, you've got a massive opportunity here, because actually what I'm seeing in your sector is so poor. If you can, really bring it to the table in terms of following my recommendations and advice, you're going to stand out so much. And and for me, that's quite exciting. I was thinking, I want to be in your marketing department for the next 6 months, because I'd love to see that happen. But you kind of come in and you help clients, and then you let them run with it. But so I think it's really about thinking about how you can be different.
It is definitely separating yourself from the competition. I think that's so important. And there is a lot of very beige, very dry, drab content around. And I think just look at it and think, actually, we can do this differently. The bar often is quite low, as you have said. So you don't need to do an awful lot to make things different. And the other thing I always say to my clients is, let's bring some personality into this, because even though it's your company page, people want to know who's in the company. Who are these people? Let's celebrate the team. Let's talk about the CEO. Let's talk about the person who makes the tea. Whoever they are in the company, they play an important role. Let's come out. I think it's really important, and it just humanizes the brand, and I think people love that.
And that, one of the clients that I worked with actually much earlier this year, we had quite an in-depth conversation on that, because they were like, most people here don't really want to be on LinkedIn. And I said, I've scrolled back through probably 20, 30, 40 of your posts, and it doesn't mention your people anywhere. There is no mention of your employees. And that kind of got them thinking. And even just simple posts, it doesn't, you don't even have to necessarily feature that person in an image if they don't want to be in it. You can still talk about them. I mean, yes, ideally you want to have an image, but is one of the benefits of the page is that you showcase what it's like to work at your company or for your brand. So I think you have to really highlight to people that is, should be a goal of the page to do that.
I agree. And I think what I love is when a company literally opens its doors to the outside world. So you get this view of what it really is happening inside the organization. And, physically, people sitting at their desks. Gosh, a long time ago, I worked with a company, and we used to do this. This was before I was doing LinkedIn. This was on Instagram, and it was a creative company. So there were some really, interesting characters, and each of them had quite interesting things on their desks. So we used to do this feature, what's on your desk, it was called. And we used to photograph somebody's desk, but also then we got them to talk through all these bits and pieces, why I've got this statue of a dinosaur on my desk, and it opened them up to the world, and it just helped people see each of the individual people as well as the company. It was just a really nice thing to do.
I think that's a really good idea, actually, Sarah. I think a "What's on your desk" campaign. I might start that one off myself.
I'm going to kick that one off again. I'm glad we've had this conversation. It reminds me of that's what we did. And
those are things that people wouldn't necessarily know, aren't they? And that's what makes it interesting content, is that it's it's not here's our product, here's our service, here's what we're doing today. It's deeper than that. And I think and that's, I guess, would you classify that as behind the scenes content? I guess
I would.
Okay.
Would. And I'd also
that's the content that people love, isn't it? It's everyone's a bit nosy, and I know I am.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my desk is, I'm looking at it now, it's complete.
I want to know where you got your wallpaper from, Sarah.
It isn't wallpaper.
Is it not?
It's fabric.
Oh, how clever is that?
So this is a exhibition stand backdrop.
Oh, that is so clever.
It's brilliant. I know. And so when I ran my first exhibition stand at the business show last year, I had these made, and it's like a tent. It's like a metal frame that comes apart, and it all goes into a bag. And then you put the frame together, and then you put the fabric over the top. And I thought, do you know, that's going to really work for here, because it takes sound as well. It absorbs the sound. And then I had this design. I said to the guy,
I thought that was your wall behind you.
I know. I had this wonderful guy called Vance Ashworth, who I knew at the time. He moved back to the States, and I think he's doing different things now. But he designed me this wall, and it's great. Some people think it's real, and they're real shells.
I thought it was real. I think he's done a cracking job there with your brand colours.
Really good job. So good old Vance, who I don't see anymore, but yes, he was great.
Oh well, we digress. But anyway, yes,
we do digress, and hey, why not? I have realised we are out of time as these things go so fast. I have one question, two more little questions, but this one question, and I ask all of my guests, and I love this question. Can you give 3 actionable tips that our viewers and listeners on the podcast can take away and action today?
Yes, I can. So my first tip would be, this is very actionable, and a lot of people don't do this, it's very basic, would be to review everything basic about your page details. So review the page bio, if you like, and there's a number of different elements to that. If you're the admin on a page, you've got all the options down the left hand side. Go and have a look at it. Does it still reflect who you are, what you do? Because every time I audit a page, I see really big opportunities there. So audit that. Does it reflect the position your business is currently at? Does it reflect what you do, what you offer? So that would be my first tip. My second tip would be to add featured posts, because you can add 3 on a company page. And again, most company pages that I visit don't have featured posts. And again, that option's on the menu on the left-hand side in the edit page section. It's sort of simple to do. You just need to have the right content in the first place on the page to then feature that. And I would say do a content review. So look at your past 20, 30 posts, do a content review. What's worked? What's got engagement? Have you changed your formats? You know, are you giving people an interesting feed to look at? If you don't know how to do that yourself, get an expert to do it, obviously, and get some valuable insights. But regularly reviewing your content and where you're at with it, I think, is a really valuable thing to do, because otherwise we just keep churning out the same thing. So look at what's worked well. Can you do more of that? So yeah, that's 3 quite actionable things, I hope.
I love that. And I love that what you're doing there is getting people to take a really deep look at what they're doing, whether it's their content or their page, and have a look at it probably with fresh eyes as well.
Yes.
Because once, you know, I think we're very guilty, all of us business owners and what have you, and marketers, of ploughing on, doing this is going to work, this is what we're doing, and actually not taking a step back and giving it a bird's eye view. And I think that's really valuable advice. So thank you, Beth, for that. That's fantastic.
You're very welcome. You're very
welcome. Last question is, where do we find you?
So you can find me on my LinkedIn personal profile. So Beth Kirk. That's where I hang out and share the majority of my content. I do have a company page, but it very much sits in the background for me because I'm a one-woman band. And yes, so that's on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram at Socially Oxford, if anybody wants to come and find me there. But my favourite place to be is LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Beth Kirk from Socially Oxford, say it right. Thank you so much for being on the B2B Live Lounge today. We've absolutely loved having you.
My pleasure. It's been amazing to chat with you, Sarah. Thank you.
Beth.